You're listening to the Spirited Entrepreneur Podcast, a show that's dedicated to cultivating intention, awareness, and flow in business and life. Join your host, Nicole Harlow, and other like-minded business owners in the Spirited Entrepreneur community over at www.thesepod.com.
Hi, and welcome to the Spirited Entrepreneur Podcast. This is your host, Nicole Harlow, and today we're going to be doing things just a little bit differently. Instead of tackling a more broad topic, I am going to be breaking down some processes and resources that I use in my business. Last week, I was teaching a webinar where I took everyone pretty much on a virtual tour through my business, where I talked about what exactly free and low-cost tools that I use to run my business. And I just wanted to be completely transparent to let people know that I spend about $100 a month running my business, which I think is a super low budget business. And that is actually coming from a place of $100 a month is not what I started out with. And actually, I didn't even upgrade to spending that amount, $100 a month, until I was 6 or 7 years into my business. So I would say on average that I've really learned how to bootstrap my business. Probably for several years, I was running my business on $25 to $35 a month. Sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. But yeah, in this episode, I am going to go through all of the resources that I use that are free or low cost. And then towards the end, I'm going to break down everything that I pay for in my business and what it amounts to monthly or yearly. So it's kind of a geeky episode, but I'm really excited and inspired by learning about other people's processes in their business and how people choose to spend their money. And there's a few little mindset shifts that I'm going to talk about as we go through too. So let's just dive right in. Like I was saying, even though my business has truly expanded over the last few years, the most important thing for me has always been this. I consciously have resisted the pressure to expand my overheads in proportion to my earnings. And I think that this is really important. I think that it's kind of like the normal trajectory is like this. You know, you start out in business and you don't have any money, like especially people like us, who are solo entrepreneurs or very small businesses or like very small startups. You're not working with angel investors or venture capitalists money. So you don't have a lot of working capital to invest in your business. Maybe you're working part-time, like I was working part-time as a waitress and teaching yoga classes. And honestly, I just didn't have the extra money to put it into my business. And so you wait until you get maybe like a tax refund from the IRS or till you save a bit of money and you know that you can invest in your business. But until you get to that point, you have to be smart and learn how to bootstrap the parts of your business. And so the trajectory is really what I see is this. And I kind of, in my mind, I sort of fell victim to this trajectory as well. So it starts off in the beginning. You don't have any money and you don't have any money to spend. So you have to look around. Well, I mean, this is kind of what separates the entrepreneurs, quote unquote, from the normal people, because the normals just say, I don't have any money, so therefore I can't start a business until I have $20K, or $10K or $5K or $50, in my case, even $50 or $100 to put into it. Now I see like the true entrepreneurs are those, pull up your sleeves and let's just see what we can do with what we have. So if it's nothing, let's see what we can do with nothing. What are some ideas that we can get off the ground where we don't need a lot of working capital to do it? Maybe we don't even need a website. So you start off like that. And then you get to a point, especially if you've been bootstrapping, you get to a point where you start to make a little bit of money. And this is what happened to me. It's like all of a sudden I started making more money in my business where I was actually profitable and I had some money left over, at the end of the month, and then I was able to pay my bills just completely on my freelance and entrepreneurial money. Then I was able to quit my job. Then I was able to just do this full time and was still struggling. And then I was finally able to get to a point where not only was I paying my bills, but there was money left over at the end of the month. And this is where I got into a bit of tricky territory, because the feeling that I had was that unless I invested in upgrading my technology, in upgrading my software, the systems that I use, that I would be an imposter. So I started looking around me and saying, okay, so the people in my level, they're using X, Y, or Z software. So I think I should upgrade to that, and that I would look at the price tag and say, I don't think I want to pay this. But I was constantly battling that feeling in my mind of like, you're not going to be legit until you upgrade to this. Or just, I have money in my pocket, so why not spend it? And I had to really rein myself back here. To be honest, I made a few software purchases and even returned them after, within the 30-day range, because I want to keep more money in my pocket, honestly. So here's a good example. When I started to make more money in my business, there was a little voice in the back of my head that was telling me that the $300 a month, say, payment to Infusionsoft, the CRM, is totally worth it because all of my business crushes were using the platform, and like the women that I wanted to be like were using that platform. So therefore, as soon as I started making a bit of money, I wanted to purchase that software just to add a layer of instant credibility to me, or the same voice was telling me that I should start using ZenDesk for my help desk, or I should be using WebinarJam instead of the free Google Hangouts, that I would be an imposter if I wasn't using these expensive software or platforms, So I struggled with all of these questions, and I definitely consider myself somewhere kind of like a mix between coupon cutting cheap, like really cheap, and, I'll pay for something if I really love spendy. I don't mind spending money, and that's an important thing. I'm not so cheap that I will pick the cheapest option for everything. But I also like to have a bargain, and I like to have more money in my pocket so I could spend it on things that I really love. So here's what I did. I sat down, and I'm constantly doing this too. Even right now I'm questioning whether it's time to upgrade my iPhone, whether it's time to upgrade my laptop to get a new Mac, and, or different pieces of equipment that I'd like to have for my business, a new camera, things like that. So I'm constantly making these pros and cons lists and seeing which is not only will give me the most bang for my buck, but what makes the most sense for my business. So I sat down, and as I started to increase my earnings, I prioritized a list of things that I'd have to pay for, but would make my business life so much easier. And then I compared that to things like cheaper options that maybe required a bit of a learning curve. For example, like using Google Hangouts for my webinars versus WebinarJam, which was, I consider that to be expensive because I think it was in the $300 range. And I just use logic and intuition to make smart choices about what's going to work for my business in the long term. What I can get away with right now using for cheap and free, for example, Google Hangouts, while I figure out whether I really like doing webinars or not. What if I just did 3 and decided, nah, it's not really a platform for me. So I tend to pick the free or the low cost option as I'm getting my feet wet and I want to test out different things. And then if I decide it's a platform that I really like, or I decide that it's something that is going to cut out a lot of time in my business or a lot of aggravation or stress, then I'll decide to pony up and actually buy the thing that I need. As I go through, actually break down, and you see the things that I really do pay for versus the things that I just get for free. You'll see what I've decided to prioritize. And it'll be different for your business because I'm a designer and I like to create a lot of media. You'll see that things design related and also related to camera, equipment, video, things like that. Podcasting, that's all important in my business. But, you'll probably have some big ticket items yourself that will be worth the investment. Just to be totally clear, this podcast and this concept that I'm talking about is not about not paying for things. It's not about doing things as cheap as possible, because I believe in quality as well. I believe in paying for professionals to help you with things that will really take your brand to the next level. For example, I'm very passionate about not paying really shitty logo designers. For example, it's like, I'd rather see you put in the time to learn the dynamics and do it yourself, or to actually pay a professional who's worth it and is going to do a really wonderful job at your logo. But it's just like, if you're going to pay for someone and you're going to pay for the crappiest kind of Fiverr logo where it's just makes your brand look really unprofessional, I think in that respect, it's either worth putting the time in to learn timeless design concepts. So you can use free tools to design it yourself, or paying, a professional that's in your budget. So I am not anti-paying for things. I just think that it's important, as you do start to have the money in your business, to really prioritize what you will pay for and what will you use free and low-cost tools, because there are tons of tools around, and I'll get into some of them in just a few minutes, the ones that I use and recommend. There's so many options out there, and I feel like your priority should be to keep more money in your pocket, to invest in yourself, in your family, however, invest for your retirement or invest wisely back into your business. But there are a lot of tools out there that are very expensive that you can get into the sort of entrepreneurial trap of thinking that just because everybody else is using them, that therefore that means you will use them, or because it will make you seem like, I don't know, a more professional or a better version of yourself, in your business if you're using this specific tool. Because I think getting over that mindset and shifting that mindset away from the impostor syndrome can be a really powerful thing. And when I look at my business and I say, okay, I very frequently have $10,000 months. And when I do, I look and say, I'm only spending $100 a month on my overhead. And that is fucking awesome to me. And, there is definitely in the future, I will upgrade some things, as it becomes necessary, or I find a way to make my life easier. For example, I've always done my taxes myself. But I was like, you know what? Next year, hiring an accountant. That's money for me that's so well spent, if it means that I don't have to do it anymore. Or another example, as I get busier in my business, it might make sense to start working with a virtual assistant to do some of the administrative tasks and process workflow tasks that really bog me down during the week. But anyway, so that's kind of my soapbox about investing smartly in your business and making wise choices when it comes to what you will spend your money on and what you will try to bootstrap and do things free and cheaply, etc. If you're going to do things the free and cheap route, I will say that it does sometimes take a bit of a learning curve. Maybe you don't have time, and if you don't have time to learn it, then it's probably worth just paying for it if you have the extra money. And I do that sometimes, I realize that it might take me a little bit of time to learn one platform for example, and if I just kind of pony up and go to the other one, then I can save myself a tremendous amount of time. And I actually just did that recently. Here's a good example. I needed to make a new website for this podcast. And as you know, I'm a website designer, and for years I've been spending my time designing on WordPress, but it actually takes a lot of my time, and it can be quite expensive sometimes. Expensive time-wise. It's not expensive dollar-wise, but it's expensive when I think of my the amount of hours that I spend, to put a website together. And I wanted to get the website done pretty quickly, and so I actually just went over to Squarespace, and it took me about 3 or 4 hours to get my site up and running, but it did mean that I had to just invest. It was about, I got a discount, so I think it was about $88 for the year. And I just plonked it down on the business credit card and said, right, this is an investment that I'm willing to make right now. Even though I could have made a WordPress website for free, because I already paid for a shared hosting where I could have as many domains, as I needed, I could have just gone in and made a completely free website. But it would have taken me 2 or 3 more days, and the Squarespace was worth my $88 to just say, right, I want this website done today. So that was kind of my impatience, and just sitting down and thinking the pros and cons, I decided to just, that $88 was worth it if I could gain back 2 days of my time. And the experience is actually really pleasurable. I'm having a lot of fun playing around with Squarespace right now. And since then, I've done 2 more sites of my own, so I have invested the extra money to do Squarespace. But anyway, let's get to some of the tools that I use in my business. So a lot of these are either free or pretty low cost. So there's tools that I use for design. I've broken them down into topics. So for design, I use canva.com, which is a free design platform. I tend to use the more professional Adobe products like Photoshop or InDesign or Illustrator in my work, just because it does add a more professional air. But if I need to do something really quickly, like resize a photo or just kind of add some text on a photo for social media, I often will just turn to Canva, because sometimes the workflow for me is a lot easier. And I also use Canva quite often to do printable PDFs or downloadable PDFs. I think that you'll really like that one if you haven't been there. And actually, if you go over to the show notes at the sepod.com, you'll have a list of, I'll have links to all of these things, so you don't have to worry. You can just navigate over to the sepod.com, and you'll be able to see all the show notes. So next for design, I use Adobe Creative Suite. Like I said, it takes the biggest bite out of my budget because it's quite expensive. But there is a free 30-day trial. And so what I used to do before I actually said, okay, I finally have to just give in. This is before I was designing professionally. When I was just a yoga teacher, and even with my book, what I would do is I would wait until I had a bunch of things to put together, a bunch of things to create. So say I needed several flyers, and I wanted to edit the layout of the book, and maybe I wanted to create a new Facebook header, etc. I would kind of batch process a bunch of different things, and I would put them together. And then I'd sign up for a free 30-day trial, and I would try to get everything done during that 30 days. So that's an option, just if you're going to sign up for the trial, you might as well get a lot of use out of it and create a few projects that in the pipeline that you can get done during those free 30 days. And don't sign up for the trial until you're ready to use it. So I actually waited until I had written my book. And then when it was written and it was edited and I was ready to do the layout, Then I applied for the trial, and I knew I had 30 days to get it done. And I did get it done during that 30 days, which was awesome. But I think I was like right up to the wire. Yeah, so Canva and Adobe Creative Suite are the two things that I use the most for proper designing. But I also go to Dafont, which I hate that name so much, but it's DAFONT, Dafont. And that is a website that has tons of free fonts. And they have some like low-cost fonts and some expensive ones as well, but it's a good place to look for like a cool new font. I use Design Seeds to go and see color palettes and get some color palette inspiration. Obviously, I use Pinterest as well as a great place to use to kind of stoke my creative fire and make mood boards for myself and for clients. And I also go to Creative Market, where you can find a lot of sometimes you can find free design resources, but most often they're paid, but they're quite cheap. You can find fonts, stock photography, anything that you can need, styled stock, things like icons or accents. You can find them all on Creative Market. I have a list of a few resources that I use whenever I'm looking for stock photography. That includes Unsplash, Death to Stock Photography, Little Visuals, and these are all free. And they're free, royalty-free, Creative Commons. You can use them for anything. You can use them on your website. You can use them on social media. You can use them anywhere and for anything that you want. And there's also Stocksy that I really like, which is quite cheap. I don't think it's very expensive, like maybe $15 to $25 about for a stock image, which is a good price. But their quality is much better and it just looks cooler. It's like much cooler, stock photography. So I really recommend Stocksy. When I want to learn a new skill, I tend to turn to YouTube, webinars, and podcasts first because I know that's where I can get a lot of things for free. Then I'll see what's happening on Creative Live because you can look on their live broadcasting schedule and you can often see what's coming up in the future that's free. If you miss it, you might have to purchase it. They're usually about like $99. I haven't purchased one yet. But I will put it on my schedule if I see that something's coming up that I'm interested in. And then I stay on their mailing list so I get updated of when their new things are coming out. If I'm not on that or Creative Live, sometimes I will pay for quite cheap courses on Skillshare or lynda.com. These are more focused towards design and like coding and photography and things, but they also have things for entrepreneurs that I think would be really helpful. So it's worth always looking on Skillshare and lynda.com to see if what you're looking for is on there. If you need to, say you don't have any money and you need to learn how to, market on a very low budget, you could find something like that on Skillshare or lynda.com. In the category of website design, I have some sites that I make for clients and myself on WordPress.org, which when you have to pay for self-hosting winds up coming to about $8 to $10 a month. Or you can be on Squarespace, which starts at about $8 a month, and that's if you pay for a yearly plan, which I do. Also, if you're going to go for Squarespace, make sure that you look out for a discount code because they're really easy to find and they'll get you 10% off. So I would just Google Squarespace promo code, see what comes up. For email marketing, I personally use GetResponse and it costs me about $12 a month. But I have used MailChimp in the past, and MailChimp is awesome and free. But if you want to use autoresponders, be prepared to pay about $10 a month, which I have done in the past. And I think that autoresponders are an absolute requirement. I wouldn't have a mailing list without one. So just imagine that if you have an email list, you're going to want to spend at least like $10 to $12 a month. Because otherwise, if you don't have an autoresponder, then every time someone joins your mailing list, it'll waste more time with you just sending them your free opt-in, or, if you have the autoresponder, then you can set it up to create communication, a line of communication to the new person on your mailing list. And this can happen while you're sleeping or at the gym or doing other work. So I think that it's totally worth it. For social media management, I use Buffer, which I love. Buffer's free when you just get started out. It's free but limited. I actually pay $10 a month, and I have a Buffer for Business account. What I like about this is it just gives me the opportunity to connect more accounts, so I can connect all of my accounts, including my Facebook group. And it also gives me the opportunity to just schedule pretty much unlimited posts, where the Buffer free does cut you off at a certain point. So I like to work it into my schedule that every Monday I'm in Buffer scheduling my posts for the upcoming week. And I schedule them so they'll run out on Monday. So when I come to the next Monday, then I'm just kind of scheduling up the queue for the following week. You can also use Hootsuite, which I've used before. I don't tend to use it a lot, but then I'm not a huge I'm not a huge Twitter power user, and it's quite Twitter centric. For analytics, obviously I'm on Google Analytics, which is free, especially if you have a Gmail account. And you can link up your websites and go in and check and track, see who's coming to your site, what their behavior is, what channels you're acquiring new users from, and just tons of cool information. And I definitely recommend going on YouTube or finding a blog that will teach you how to actually use Google Analytics to get the best bang for your time, so you know what you are actually looking for. For video, because I do create video, and it's actually where I want to move more into in the future, I have a Vimeo Pro membership. It's not free, but then you can just use Vimeo for free if you're a business owner. I wanted to be able to sell video, so that's why I got the Vimeo Pro membership, so I can sell videos on demand. It's $200 a year, which is kind of pricey, I think. It's one of my biggest expenses, but it's something that I invested in this year. And right now I'm really happy with it, and I think that it will continue to be a good investment. Podcasting, that's a new one for me, so I just had to, figure out how that's going to fit into my budget. And it turns out with podcasting, there was only one real expense, and it was for podcast hosting. So every podcast is hosted on a host, not on my website. I use Libsyn for that. And the cheapest plan is $5 a month, and I actually have the $20 a month plan just because I want to be able to create more material. But if you were just podcasting, not very frequently, you could start podcasting for about $5 a month. And finally, the biggest category is productivity. And I have a lot of really cool free tools that I use here. And I think one that I actually pay for. So I use Evernote. Most people know what that is, taking notes and organizing. I love Evernote. I'm actually using it right now for podcasting for my notes. I have it open, and just love it. It goes everywhere with me. I have it on all my devices. I don't use it anywhere near the level of productivity that I know you can use it for. But, I guess I need to watch a YouTube video or something that will teach me how to take Evernote to the next level. I use something called Freedcamp as my project management dashboard. I know people really like Asana. I know some people are on Basecamp. I actually don't use a project management dashboard that often for clients. I kind of only use Freedcamp just as a way to, I just store passwords and things on there, And if I need it for my own edification, for my own use in some kind of project, I'll go to it. I didn't want to pay for a project management dashboard, especially since I wasn't sure whether it was actually going to be useful in my business. And it turns out it's not very useful personally, but I still keep my account over at Freedcamp. And like I said, I do use it every once in a while. I use Wave apps as my accounting app. It's really cool. You get to they have several apps that you can get for your iPhone or the iPad, and you can scan your receipts and put them right into your program. I have it linked up with my bank account and my PayPal accounts. And once a week I go in on a Friday and I just make sure that everything's updated. It allows you to categorize different transactions, and you can also do payroll. But if you want to do payroll, it's $5 a month. But, it's nice to have everything in one place. For blog inspiration and article inspiration and just keeping the blogs that I read organized, I use Feedly, and I also use Pocket. Nowadays, my Feedly use is really eclipsing how much that I use Pocket, but that's not because I like Feedly better. It's just because I like to minimize the amount of apps that I'm using, and Feedly and Pocket kind of do the same thing for me. So right now I'm just sticking with Feedly. But Pocket is more a place to save the articles, whereas Feedly is more of the place to explore. Like I mentioned before, I use Google Hangouts for my webinars, which I have had some technical difficulties with, but upon speaking to other people that have done webinars, there seems to be technical difficulties whether you use a free webinar platform or a $300 webinar platform, so I'm not sweating it. And right now, I'll just stick with free because it does everything that I want it to do, and it records all of the webinars and puts them onto the YouTube channel, which I think is pretty cool. Upwork is something that I have used occasionally for finding freelancers if I need some extra help. PayPal, I use all my invoices in PayPal, and actually I do most of my business banking through PayPal. It's easy, it's simple. People can pay with their PayPal account or they can pay with a credit card. I like that. If given the choice on a website, I tend to always pay with PayPal, and so I like to offer that to my clients and customers as well. Calendly is an app that I use for appointment settings and also as a calendar. It's free and it links up to my Google Calendar, and so it puts, if a client, say a potential client wants to have like a 30-minute consultation with me, they can do it right on my website. They can put their details in. It adds it right to my calendar, sends them a reminder email, and sends me a reminder email. Totally automated, totally awesome. Really happy with that one. Typeform, I use a lot. Beautiful forms that you can put on your website or you can send out to someone. I have my web design questionnaires on Typeform. I have layout design questionnaires. I have my customer intake form on my website is also Typeform. Yeah, just really love the platform, and they look really cool. Let's see, last two, Rescue Time is free. It keeps track of how I spend my time and my productivity. I think it's really cool to actually see how much time it's not cool to see how much time I spend on the internet every week, but it's cool to see where I spend my time, and I set goals for myself of productivity versus distraction time, and I like to see that every week I do hit them, which is awesome. And finally, Dropbox, which you can get for free if you want to just have a limited amount of storage. I actually pay $10 a month for 1 terabyte of storage, which for me is worth it, because I travel a lot. I don't always want to take my external hard drive. I have quite an old Mac right now that doesn't have a lot of internal storage. And so that $10 a month of peace of mind of knowing that I can put all of my photos and videos and client-based work up there just makes it so much nicer and easier for me. So we came to the part where we're going to do a little bit of math, and I will tell you the breakdown of everything that I spend my money with. So this year, I can't say for any other year, but this is this year. I spent $200 a year for Vimeo Pro. That's a new thing for me. I spend $80 a year for Squarespace for my website. $120 a year for Dropbox. That's $10 a month. $144 a year for GetResponse. $12 a month. And disgusting $624 a year for Adobe Creative Suite, which is a huge chunk of my budget, and it actually makes me feel a bit like I want to vomit when I hear that number. They charge me $52 a month to have access to all of the Adobe programs. But I am a designer, and I use those tools every single day, and it is worth it, and it is the core of my business, and so if that's my biggest overhead, then I think I'm fine. It's just I'm so cheap. That's $624 a year when I see it on paper, just like, ugh. So all told, those things take me to about $98 a month. There are some extra things that I do pay for, like occasional hardware updates, things like new computer, camera, iPhone. I do pay for Facebook ads occasionally too, not all the time, but I may spend $15 to $20. But this is just a breakdown of my recurring costs. I don't rent a space, so I don't have to pay for rent or anything like that. I don't have any extra software than what I've already described. If I pay extra for things and they're not worth it, I phase them out of my business because I don't like getting that extra charge every month. It drives me crazy. So that's kind of it. That's how I run my business for $98 a month plus some change here and there if I have other things to pay for. But I really wanted to share this glimpse inside my business, especially for everyone who wasn't able to be on the webinar that I taught last week. And I guess my hope for this podcast episode, it was a bit more about process and not so much about the psychological or the spiritual or just the deeper side of business. But I think that it's nice to have a combination of both, where you have where you get to see a glimpse inside of someone's process, but then you also get to hear where their heart and their mind and their psyche is, in their business. But I really hope that this episode gives you not only access to all of these free or low-cost tools, maybe some that you didn't necessarily know about. I hope that you do go into the show notes and check them out and see which ones work for your business. And maybe there's something you're paying for that you can actually get for free, and it will, free up maybe $20, $30, $50 in your business every month. And what can you use that for? Maybe some Facebook ads to draw some extra people to your business, or maybe there's another wise way to invest it. But I wanted this also to be permission to start thinking like a lean startup. I mean, in my business, it's always been my motivation to stay as lean and mean as possible and not get a lot of bulky baggage that is going to weigh me down. I don't want to be stressing if I have a slow month that now I have $1,000 worth of overheads in my business that I have to cover. So I like to keep myself lean with my laptop and Wi-Fi and access to a few free and low cost tools, and then a few more expensive tools that help me get my business run. But absolutely do not fall into the trap of feeling like just because you're starting to make money that you need to upgrade proportionally to the amount of money that you are making. Because when you start making more money in your business, I want to see way more of it in your pockets and not leaking out through these extra extraneous leaks. So hopefully you guys liked this and that inspires you to create a more lean business and start thinking like a lean startup. And before I head off, there's just a few things that I wanted to say. The first is that there is a thriving digital community aspect of this podcast. It's a place for you to meet other spirited entrepreneurs, find an accountability partner, get inspired, and share your business. You'll find your invitation as well as other details about the show on the sepod.com. You can find any additional instructions about how to subscribe and leave a review, plus show notes, how to submit a question, recommend a guest, or contact me at the sepod.com. You can also find me on Twitter at @HeyNicoleHarlow. The Spirited Entrepreneur Podcast is sponsored by the folks over at Audible. They have been really generous and have offered an audiobook of your choice, completely free to all listeners of the show. A book that I think really ties in beautifully with the theme of today's show is Chris Guillebeau's The $100 Startup. To download your free copy of The $100 Startup today, go to audibletrial.com/spirited. Again, that's audibletrial.com/spirited. And download The $100 Startup or choose from one of the 180,000 titles available. This is Nicole Harlow, and until next time, have a great day.